So we'll go ahead and call the Newark City Council Finance Committee to order. Members present are Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Johnson in place for Mr. Marmey, Mr. Bubb, Mr. Cost, and myself. We do have 4 pieces of legislation on our agenda tonight. The first piece is to consider resolution number 1557, appropriating and disappropriating monies for the municipal corporation, and all of these items under this resolution are to be expedited. The first request is for dealing with some employees. I see Director Buskirk at the podium.
Good evening. I'm going to try to do this in place of Director Spurgeon, who couldn't be here this evening. And 1557 is, we've asked for that to be expedited. That's to pay for an employee who is retired.
Okay. Motion, Mr. Bubb.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Floyd. Any questions or comments for Director Buskirk? Questions or comments from the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Director Buskirk. Our next, I guess the next 2 items are kind of together, and I see Director Sad is up at the podium to discuss the next item.
Hello, everyone. I filed a budget revision for our ISP jail diversion grant, and this is what this actually is. We're moving money from the personnel account, wages and fringes, to the law enforcement account. There was an excess in the wages and fringes, $12.57, and that was due to Chad Smith was making a higher wage than a newer person that started, Stephen Cromer. So there was some excess there. We don't want to give the money back to the state. We would rather use it. They would rather us use it, so we did a revision so we can move the money to law enforcement and buy some supplies for that particular grant.
Okay. The first section is the disappropriation from the salary.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Bubb.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Floyd. Any questions about the disappropriation from the salary? Questions from the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So the disappropriation has been approved and moved on to full council.
I'll move the appropriation.
And Mr. Bubb moves that we send the appropriation on to full council.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Floyd. Any questions regarding this? Any questions from the audience? All in favor of moving this on to full council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Director Sands. Okay. Our next resolution is to consider resolution number 1558, appropriating monies for the municipal corporation. And looks like Director Sands, you're up again.
Yes.
You visit us a lot tonight, huh?
Yes.
This one is appropriation again for the Probation Improvement Grant Incentive Program Fund.
Yes, the total on this is $89,570. At the beginning of fiscal year 14 and 15, there were some performance measures that were set for that particular grant cycle. We achieved it 100% on 2 of them, and we achieved it 90% on the other one. The incentive part of the probation improvement and incentive is what this is talking about. If we achieve at this level, they will pay us, in essence, a reward for doing what we said we were going to do. So this is what it is. The incentive for lowering probation violations totaled $48,500. The incentive for lowering the number of people returning to jail was $39,000, and then the incentive for increasing our ORAS assessments was $2,070, so that adds up to the $89,570.
And what is it that you will do with these incentives?
We have to spend it according to Ohio Revised Code section 514930, and what that is basically community corrections programs. One of those programs is titled probation, so we can spend that money for anything that would be towards the probation department. So I'll talk with our judges, and we'll decide what would be purchases that would go towards probation type stuff. It could be anywhere from equipment to programs, anything that would relate to probation. We could use this money for.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Bub,
Second.
second Mrs. Floyd. Any further questions from the committee for Director Satter? Any questions or comments from the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Let's see. Section 2 of this resolution is the request for the appropriation of the unappropriated balance for the sewer department fund for $25,000. And actually looks like the next three items might be yours.
Yeah, the next three are kind of the same stuff. I guess I can cover them all and you can vote on them how you want, but these are just replacement of service vehicles that we have. We have an annual service replacement or vehicle replacement program. We try to keep heavy service vehicles 6 to 8 years, standard service vehicles at least 10 years. All these vehicles we're talking about are within that range. And the biggest bulk of this money is for a dump truck. Those dump trucks are close to $100,000, and we try to circulate them out because if I don't keep trucks running, I got people standing around waiting to fix them. So, but we do have a policy of the number of years we try to keep stuff just in general. So, I don't know if you want me to go through individual vehicles or not, but that's what we got here. So.
And we outright are purchasing these.
We purchase vehicles, yes. We've looked at leasing it. It doesn't appear to be an advantage to us to do that cost-wise. So.
Motion.
Motion, Mrs. Floyd.
Second.
Second, Mr. Bub. This one is on Section 2, which is the $25,000 appropriation. Any questions regarding this section? Mr. Costa.
You say that the one is a dump truck, that's I'm assuming that's the 100,000?
Yes.
And the other two are what?
Pickup trucks, service vehicles. These are all purchased off the state purchase plan as well, so the bidding is done through the state purchasing plan. So.
Thank you.
What will happen to the old ones?
We've been selling them on, I forget the name of it.
Gov Deals.
Gov Deals. Is where seems like we're getting the most money out of them. We possibly may trade one or two of them in, depending on the deals we get. And some of them are in bad shape and we don't get much money out of them, but other ones so we try to do the Gov Deals thing mostly. So
I get heavily used.
yeah. Dump truck will go to Gov Deals because we can get better deals. There's more wide range of people that would want to buy that. A pickup truck, generally the trade-in's a little easier and get a decent price for what we can on trade-in on those. So.
Any further questions from Mr. Loomis on Section 2? Any questions from the audience? All those in favor of moving this section on to full council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That carries 5-0. And Section 3 is a $26,500 appropriation. Any questions for Mr. Loomis regarding this section?
Motion.
Motion, Mr. Bub.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Floyd. Any further questions from the committee? Questions from the audience? All those in favor of moving this section on to full council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That section moves on 5-0. And the last, Section 4 is for a $100,000 appropriation. Any questions for Mr. Loomis regarding this section?
Motion.
Motion, Mr. Bub. Mr. Costa?
I do have one question. I want to make sure I understand something. I see here a 25, a 26, and a 100, and then it says a pickup truck and three pickups and a dump truck.
Yeah. Some of the money's already appropriated, so this is just kind of adding to some of the other.
Oh, okay.
So the total cost is going to be a little bit more than that, but this is the money that needs to be appropriated for those number of vehicles that we're going to
Okay,
get.
because I was only saying 2 pickups and a dump truck, and then it mentions 3 on the...
Yep. Yeah, it's. Yeah, I guess I could have been a little clearer on that, but some money's already in place. But this is
So we've already approved for one of them?
in various. There's certain amounts in one fund, certain amounts in other funds, and so it's kind of how we're putting the financing together for this. So
Then the total is a dump truck and 3 pickups?
that's what we're getting, right?
Thank you.
I'll second.
Second. Thank you, Mrs. Floyd. Any further questions from the committee for Mr. Loomis? Questions from the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Loomis. Section 5 is a request for appropriation of unappropriated balance for the intra-government fund in the amount of $84,269. And I've not seen you in a long time, but welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. This appropriation is so that I can do the 2014 Jed Z1 distribution to the City of Newark and the Income Tax Office.
Motion.
Motion, Mr. Bode. Second, Mr. Cost. Any questions regarding this section? Any questions from the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Short and sweet for you. Okay. Our third resolution tonight, third piece of legislation is consider resolution number 1560, authorizing and directing the mayor of the city of Newark to prepare and submit an application to the United States Department of Justice for fiscal year 2015 COPS hiring grant. And I see Ms. Gilks at the podium.
The city has decided that we are going to apply for 2 entry-level officers through the COPS grant program.
Motion.
Motion, Mrs. Floyd.
Second.
Second, Mr. Cost. So you said there'll be 2 hired through this?
Well, we are going to request 2.
Request 2, I'm sorry. Any questions from Ms. Gilks regarding this piece of legislation? Questions from the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Gilks.
This needs to be expedited. I put that on the request about waiving the second reading.
Got it.
Okay. Thank you.
Is it related to a timeline? Is that what's going on? All right. And our final piece of legislation for finance tonight is to consider ordinance number 1517 to provide for the issuance of $6,600,000 of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of refunding outstanding bond anticipation notes previously issued for the purpose of paying the cost of capital improvements, including Fire Station 1 improvements, including demolition, professional design and property acquisition, City Hall parking improvements, service complex construction improvements, South 2nd Street Bridge repair, together with additional Fire Station 1 improvements, Phase 1, additional funds for Fire Station improvements, and all necessary appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Johnson is at the podium.
That basically covers the history of this debt. But what we're doing tonight is we have a one-year note that was approved about this time last year by this committee that allows, as you said, construction of the fire station and 3 other capital projects. Since this was a one-year note, it needs to be renewed at this time. And it is the intention of the city next year to issue a long-term bond to replace this. Would be a more structured type of debt. And I think at this time probably what we would do next year is issue 2 bonds, one for $5.5 million that just covers the fire station, and the second one for $1.1 million to cover the other capital items that are involved here. I'd like to do it that way to keep it kind of clean, since we have dedicated revenue from EMS billing paying for the fire station debt. I want to keep that separate from the rest of it. Okay. And this should be expedited too, just because of our timeline.
Yeah, we got that marked.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Bub.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Floyd. Mr. Johnson, I had a question. You and I had met, and you gave me these handwritten notes from time ago. Now, the downtown fire station itself, that note is 6.6, correct?
Yeah, the fire station portion is $5.5 million, and there's an additional $1.1 for the other capital items. Right now, we have just...
Because you had written on here 1.1 for Church Street Canal Market.
No, that's a different one.
Okay.
This 6.6 is made up of 5.5 million for the fire station and 1.1 million, which covered repairs to the South 2nd Street Bridge, repairs to the parking deck behind City Hall, and repairs to the service complex.
Okay, so the note that you wrote on here, that just you just wrote down downtown fire station, but it encompassed all that.
Yeah, the others are rolled.
I was just confused about that. I was like, well, if we already have 6.6 in the one note, then how are we getting these other ones to refinance it? So,
well, I don't like when we do various purpose debt, because it becomes very confusing. But that's the way bond counsel likes to do it. It actually makes it a little less expensive to do it that way, but it is more confusing, and it allows for people like me just to consolidate something so you miss out on part of it.
Okay.
But sorry about that.
Oh, no, you're fine. I just wanted to make sure I understood correctly. Any other questions for Mr. Johnson? Questions from the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you,
sir. That concludes the business of Finance Committee. Up next is the Service Committee.
I'll bring the Service Committee meeting to order. Tonight, we have Mr. Rath, Mr. Blake, Mr. Roletta, Mr. Bubb, and myself. The first ordinance I have is number 15-15, annexing certain territory generally described as being 47.211 acres, more or less, located in Newton Township to the city of Newark, Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very briefly, this is the last step in a regular annexation process for 48 acres on Licking Springs Road. It's been before council before on a resolution. Then it went back to the county commissioners where they conducted a series of public hearings with input from the applicant, township trustees, fire department, various other residents in the area. It was approved by the county commissioners. It's now back for Newark City Council's consideration as the last step in that process. We've entered into a highway maintenance agreement with the county with regard to care of the roadway that will be segmented in this process. So it's really down to the last step in the entire process now, of the city just essentially accepting this property into the political boundaries of the city.
Motion.
Second. Motion by Mr. Bubb, second by Mr. Rath. Does anybody have, of the committee, any questions for Director Sassy? Any other questions out of the audience? All those in favor of moving ordinance number 15-15 to full council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you, Lambert.
Thank you.
Our second ordinance is 15-16, changing the zoning classification of certain real property generally described as 847 West Locust Street, City of Newark, Licking County, Ohio, from that of single-family residence RL, Low Density District, to GO, General Office District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's been a request made to change the zoning classification of this property. This property has been through this process once before, and it went to the Zoning Appeals Board where it was declined. This particular property has been operating a daycare out of there, and it has come to our attention that we believe that the amount of children in that center, in that home, exceeds the amount of children allowed per the city ordinance. We've written letters to that extent, and the homeowner has decided to again apply for a zoning change. This is something I've worked with Mr. Roletta on, we've worked with the zoning inspector on. It's something that the administration at this point is not in favor of, But the property owner has every right to, again, ask this committee to send it to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and they have every right to have it heard in front of Zoning Appeals. So you have every right to approve it and send it on Zoning Appeals, or you have every right not to approve it, but it has seen the light of day in a process. And Alex, if you want to speak to it in any way, please feel free.
Are there any questions out of members of the committee for Superintendent Rose? Yeah, Mr. Brown.
I'll just comment on this. I've talked with a lot of the residents in this neighborhood. This is a residential neighborhood, and it is they're wanting to change a spot of that residential neighborhood into general office district, which would be spot zoning. All the residents in that neighborhood are opposed to this. They were opposed to it the last time they went through this process, and they're still opposed to it. And it's spot zoning, and it's not something that we should do anyways. So I would be in favor of making a motion to adopt, just so that we could vote this down, rather than just let it die.
I would second.
So I'm going to make a motion.
Okay, so the motion to... See?
I just had one comment, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly.
Just for point of clarification, complaints have come to our office on this because the current zoning allows for up to 6 children in the home.
Okay.
We have foregone prosecution on this, or movement in that direction, pending action on this zoning application. I think to some extent perhaps this application was filed in response to the zoning inspector making contact, explaining what the zoning currently allows, and we have held off on filing any kind of charges or pursuing any kind of action until after City Council expresses an opinion on whether the zoning would change or not. If you go to general office, you look at your code, there's a variety of things that are allowed in a general office district that aren't allowed in a residence district. In this specific case, it would allow an unlimited number of children in the daycare. Well, the zoning would allow unlimited. Children's Services has a limit on it, but I don't know what that is. It's more than 6, but our zoning would not put a cap on the number of children in this zone.
Other questions? Members of the committee? I have one. So essentially what you're saying is we've been down this road before.
We have.
And has that been an extended time period ago, or recent, or?
It's been the last couple years.
And is there anything different about what's
No.
being asked for this time than last time? In any sense of the word?
There's not. The wheels of government move very slowly. Enforcement of things out of line sometimes don't come quick enough according to constituents, and there's always avenues available for people such as this one to reapply for a zoning change and hope something would different. But Mr. Rath is correct. It would be a spot zoning in a residential neighborhood. Very clear. There is an allowable for her to take, or for that person to bring children into the home, but the limit is 6. It's our opinion that limit could be exceeded. I mean, it could be being exceeded, and that's why the zoning inspector got involved.
So this would go back to planning, if we were to approve this, this would go back to planning?
It'd come back to Planning Commission, it'd come into our committee, and I would again render an opinion on it. And
Any questions or comments out of members of the audience? All those in favor? I'm sorry? Mr. Floyd?
So what's the advantage over voting in favor of it, which they're talking about now, as opposed to just letting it drop?
well, I think what Jeff made is he wanted a motion and Ryan seconded so they get it on the floor, then they can have a vote on it.
Okay, all right.
And then at that point might open up debate or any further questions.
My intent is to vote no now.
Are there any other questions out of the audience? Any other questions? All in favor of moving this on to full council signify by saying aye. All those opposed signify by saying
Aye.
aye. That goes down 0.5.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes Service Committee. If they're ready for capital improvements.
We'll call the Capital Improvement Committee to order. President is Mr. Rath, Mr. Loretta, Mr. Cost, Mr. Johnson, and myself. Consider one resolution, number 1559, appropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation. Sorry.
Thank you,
Roads.
thank you, Madam Chair. What we're asking for, and I asked Mr. Hodgkins to be here tonight too, in case you have any further questions, in case I struggle explaining this to you. We're asking for $10,000 to replace outdated software. What we currently have in the cemetery is we have software written in extinct language. In other words, it's a DOS-based program. The program, when we bought it, was 2 years old, and we bought it in 1991. The current program has a problem with printing. We have to use old printers in order to get it to spit reports out, which are not very reliable. The reports are not very detailed, they're not very thorough, and it's very hard to navigate for existing information. As a matter of fact, all the people that are buried in Cedar Hills Cemetery can't even be loaded up into this computer program because the amount of people that are buried there exceeds the memory and the capacity of this program. So what we've done is we've had several meetings on this, and we've decided that we'd like to build our own program. And the first thing we want to do is we want to convert the data into an SQL, which is basically, it makes it a more flexible database language so that different users can use it. We want to make it a web-based program so that it can easily be accessed from anywhere in the city. We want to have a public site on it so that, if I have somebody buried there, I can easily locate where that person's buried. I want to have a calendar on there that shows the burials, and when they're going to happen. What the positive thing about that is we'll have a separate login for the funeral homes so that they can log in and they can see when we're having other services when they are planning their burials to their customer base. We want to have a sales and invoicing and accounts receivable feature, all things that we struggle with now. We want to have a final disposition form, eliminating any handwritten final dispositions, a burial report, sales report, a payment history report. A lot of people will come in and they will buy plots in the cemetery and they'll enter into a payment arrangement with us. A lot of these documents are handwritten, but now it'll be computer data, and so we know when somebody's supposed to be in and make a payment. We also want it to sort, so we can sort several fields and kind of look up different things. We're going to have a mobile app so that if I want to see where a former mayor is buried up there, I'll be able to go to my mobile device, do a mobile app. It'll do a Google search, and it'll show what section and what site they're buried in. It's a much needed program, and I'd agree that the cost of computer programs is egregious, but in light of the fact this old program was again purchased in 1991, at that point it was 2 years old and it's DOS based, we're really concerned that the program will crash and we won't even be able to get it open to get the information out. And this includes all the transferring of data and things of that nature too. So hopefully I've done a good framework of the needs.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Motion?
Motion.
Second. Mr. Johnson, second by Mr. Rath. Are there any questions from the committee? Questions from the audience? Mr. Blake?
Madam Chair, Director Rose, who's
Yes.
doing this work for you?
John Carson and Affluent. So it's been done locally. And what I like about that is if we find we need to make further tweaks, we can.
And did you mention that there are still like 30,000
Jeff, I can.
people that have to be?
No, I think it's Jeff, is that number closer to 10,000?
Yeah, it's like 13.
13,000?
Yeah.
13,000.
Mm-hmm, 13,000 that are people
Yet
that
to
are
be
put into the program. That's correct. We will have an up-to-date computer program.
One last question. This isn't in any way, this is just for software and updating. This isn't paying someone, a new person, or
No, this is...
extra work to put this in. This is just software.
This is software, that's correct. And under the Job and Family Services grant that Ms. Gilks was got, Mr. Hodgkins has been able to bring a person in to help with getting the people ready to be put into the new system.
Are there any other questions? All in favor of moving to full council?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Could I make two more comments while we have everybody's attention? I just wanted to make mention for the last 2.5 years, D Hall has brought art to the second floor of City Hall, and we appreciate that. And we decided to transfer into some old pictures of Newark, and Dee and I spent a fair amount of time down at the Buckingham House with the Historical Society. We picked some pictures, and tomorrow Dee's going to donate her time to help have those pictures hung in City Hall. And I just wanted to say, Dee, thank you for your time, and to Ryan Bob, who gave a lot of input on this computer software when I was kind of going through my mind and this and that. I wanted to say thank you to Ryan for giving me some ideas.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm sorry. We adjourn the capital improvements. Thank you.